How the middle class was stolen. 1950s versus 2025. Most people believe the middle class simply evolved with the times. I believe this too for years. We're told that life is more expensive now because we have better technology, better healthcare, better everything. The narrative sounds logical. Housing costs more because homes are better built. Education costs more because it's higher quality. Healthcare costs more because medicine has advanced. But here's where it gets interesting. The numbers tell a completely different story. A story that will fundamentally shift how you view money, success, and what it really means to be middle class in today's world. In 1950, the median home price in America was $7,400. The median household income was $3,300. That's a 2.2 to 1 ratio. Today, the median home price is approximately $400,000. The median household income is around $70,000. That's a ratio of 5.7 to 1. In many major cities, we're looking at ratios of 8 to 10 to 1. Let that sink in, Luxonians. The same middle-class lifestyle that required 2.2 years of income in 1950 now requires nearly a decade of income in 2025. Healthcare tells an even more dramatic story. In 1950, healthcare represented less than 4% of the average family budget. Today, it consumes 15 to 20% of household income. Education? A year at Harvard in 1950 cost $600. Adjusted for general inflation, that should be about $7,200 today. The actual cost? Over $80,000 annually. But the real theft wasn't just in the numbers. It was in the redefinition of what middle class means. In 1950, being middle class meant freedom, financial security, the ability to support a family on one income while building wealth for the future. It meant owning your home outright by retirement. It meant having savings, not just managing debt payments. Today's middle class has been conditioned to accept a fundamentally different reality. Being house poor is marketed as success. Carrying student debt for decades is normalized as an investment in your future. Credit card debt is treated as a lifestyle tool rather than a financial emergency. The middle class didn't disappear. It was systematically redefined. Here's what most people don't understand about this transformation. The shift from the gold standard to fiat currency in 1971 created an entirely new economic paradigm. When money is no longer backed by tangible assets, the rules of wealth creation change dramatically. Asset prices inflate while wages stagnate. Those who own assets get richer. Those who depend on wages get relatively poorer. This isn't conspiracy theory, Luxonians. This is mathematics. But there's a deeper layer to this story that connects to something far more profound than economics alone. Rhonda Byrne taught us that we create our reality through our dominant thoughts and vibrations. But behavioral psychology shows us exactly how this works in practice. The collective consciousness around money and success has fundamentally shifted since the 1950s. Back then, the middle class operated from what psychologists call an abundance mindset, coupled with delayed gratification behaviors. Today's middle class operates from scarcity thinking paired with instant gratification habits. This combination creates a perfect storm of financial stress. Think about the psychological language we use. In 1950, people talked about building wealth and financial security. Today we talk about managing debt and affording payments. This linguistic shift reflects a deeper cognitive pattern that determines financial outcomes. When an entire class of people shifts from wealth-building behaviors to debt management behaviors, the results become predictable. We manifest exactly what we focus on most consistently through our daily actions and decisions. The middle class began focusing on what they couldn't afford, rather than what they could create. This shift in focus created a self-perpetuating psychological cycle. When you consistently think about debt payments, your brain becomes wired to notice more opportunities that require debt payments. When you focus on what you lack, your attention filters reality to confirm that experience of lacking. Behavioral economics shows us that financial decisions are rarely rational. They're emotional responses triggered by psychological patterns. The 1950s middle class developed behavioral patterns around saving, waiting, and building. Today's middle class develops behavioral patterns around borrowing, buying, and paying. But here's where this gets truly fascinating. The same forces that stole the traditional middle class created unprecedented opportunities for those who understand the new rules. Asset inflation, when properly leveraged, becomes wealth creation. The gig economy, when strategically approached, becomes multiple income streams. Technology, when mastered, becomes a force multiplier for personal wealth building. Real middle class in 2025 means understanding that your home is a lifestyle choice, not a debt trap. It means building passive income streams, rather than climbing corporate ladders. It means thinking like an investor, not an employee. Consider this striking contrast. In 1950, a single income could support a family of 4, build savings, and fund retirement. The breadwinner worked 40 hours per week and came home to family time. Weekends were for rest and recreation, not side hustles and debt management. But here's what's truly fascinating about 1950s spending patterns. The average family spent money on necessities: housing, food, clothing, transportation, and basic entertainment. That was it. No cable bills, no internet packages, no streaming services, no gym memberships, no monthly subscription boxes. They had fewer choices, which meant fewer opportunities to bleed money on non-essentials. The 1950s middle class operated on a simple principle: pay cash or wait. Credit was reserved for major purchases like homes and cars. Everything else was bought with money you actually had. Today's middle class operates on a fundamentally different principle: buy now, pay forever. We've normalized financing everything from education to vacations to daily coffee habits. Here's the debt trap that's extracted wealth from millions of families. In 1950, if you wanted something you couldn't afford, you saved for it. This created a natural spending discipline and ensured you truly valued what you bought. Today, if you want something you can't afford, you finance it. This removes the natural pause that prevents impulsive decisions and creates a psychological disconnect between desire and cost. The families thriving in today's economy aren't necessarily earning more than the struggling middle class. They're operating from a completely different financial framework. They've returned to 1950s principles adapted for 2025 realities. They understand that true security comes from being debt-free, not from having good credit scores. The debt-free mindset creates a completely different relationship with money and opportunity. When you're not sending thousands of dollars monthly to creditors, you can take calculated risks. You can invest in yourself, your education, your business ideas. Debt freedom isn't just about mathematics, Luxonians. It's about psychological liberation. When you don't owe anyone anything, you can't be controlled by anyone's agenda. The 1950s middle class understood this intuitively. They viewed debt as temporary necessity, not permanent lifestyle. A mortgage was paid off as quickly as possible. Car loans were avoided when possible. Credit card debt was considered financial emergency, not financial tool. Here's what 90% of people don't realize about the current economic landscape. We're living through the greatest wealth transfer in human history. The gap between those who understand the new rules and those who don't is widening at an unprecedented pace. But this isn't a reason for despair. It's the greatest opportunity of our lifetime. Every economic shift creates winners and losers. The question isn't whether change is happening. The question is which side of the change you choose to position yourself on. The financial institutions understand this perfectly. Credit card companies aren't hoping you pay off your balance. They've built entire business models around your monthly minimum payments. Student loan companies aren't invested in your post-graduation success. They're invested in your decades-long payment schedules. The system has been redesigned to extract wealth from the many and concentrate it among the few. But within this same system lie the tools and opportunities to reverse engineer your way to financial freedom. The 1950s middle class was built on industrial age principles: stability, predictability, and linear career progression. That world is gone, and it's never coming back. The new middle class is being built on information age principles: adaptability, multiple income streams, and exponential thinking. This is where the law of attraction becomes practically powerful, not just philosophically interesting. Your financial reality is always matching your dominant behavioral patterns around money. If you're constantly worried about bills, your actions will consistently create bills to worry about. If you're focused on building wealth, your behaviors will discover and create opportunities to build wealth. Cognitive psychology shows us that the universe doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you're afraid of. Your subconscious mind only responds to what you're consistently programming through repeated thoughts and actions. When you truly understand that the old middle class was stolen, you can stop trying to recreate it. Instead, you can focus your energy on building something far superior. Warren Buffett said it best. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. The same principle applies to the entire economy. Wealth transfers from those who think short-term to those who think long-term. The middle class wasn't just stolen by economic forces. It was surrendered by mindset shifts. The good news? What was surrendered can be reclaimed. But not by going backwards, only by moving forward with greater intelligence, better strategy, and higher vibration. The path forward requires understanding both the practical and metaphysical aspects of wealth creation. You need to understand compound interest and cash flow, but you also need to understand behavioral psychology and abundance consciousness. Here's how to apply 1950s wisdom to 2025 reality. First, adopt the cash-first mentality. If you can't pay cash, you probably can't afford it. This single principle will eliminate 80% of financial stress from your life. Second, distinguish between needs and manufactured wants. The marketing industrial complex has convinced us we need things that didn't exist in human history until 5 minutes ago. Third, embrace what psychologists call delayed gratification. The 1950s middle class practiced this naturally because financing wasn't readily available. They saved for what they wanted, which created time to evaluate whether they actually needed it. Fourth, eliminate the debt payment mindset entirely. When your monthly obligations are minimal, your options become unlimited. This psychological shift from "what can I afford monthly" to "what do I actually need" transforms your entire relationship with money. The debt-free path isn't about deprivation, Luxonians. It's about redirection. Instead of sending money to credit card companies, you send it to your future self. Instead of paying interest, you earn interest. Instead of building someone else's wealth, you build your own. Here's the freedom formula the 1950s middle class understood intuitively. Low expenses plus high savings rate equals unlimited options. When your monthly fixed costs are minimal, you can weather economic storms, take entrepreneurial risks, and invest in opportunities others can't afford to pursue. This is why debt extraction from the middle class is so psychologically devastating. It's not just about the money. It's about the loss of choice, the loss of flexibility, the loss of breathing room to make decisions based on values rather than payment schedules. Start by changing your language. Stop talking about what you can't afford. Start talking about what you're building. Stop focusing on payment amounts. Start focusing on asset acquisition. Stop thinking like an employee. Start thinking like an investor. The universe responds to the behavioral signals you send out consistently. When you consistently signal abundance thinking through your daily financial choices, even in challenging circumstances, you begin attracting abundance opportunities. This isn't positive thinking. This is strategic behavioral alignment with economic reality. The families building real wealth in 2025 understand something profound. They know that external circumstances don't determine internal behavioral patterns. Internal behavioral patterns determine external circumstances. They maintain abundance consciousness even when surrounded by scarcity programming. They focus on opportunity even when others focus on obstacles. They build assets even when others accumulate liabilities. Most importantly, they understand that the real middle class was never about external markers of success. It was always about internal freedom. Freedom to make choices based on values rather than financial pressure. Freedom to take risks because you have multiple safety nets. Freedom to create rather than just consume. The 1950s middle class enjoyed this freedom not because they earned more, but because they owed less. Their wealth wasn't measured by their possessions, but by their lack of obligations. Today's path back to real middle-class freedom requires adopting this same principle. Build wealth by eliminating obligations, not by accumulating assets that come with payment plans. When you're debt-free, a modest income becomes powerful. When you're debt-dependent, even a high income feels inadequate. This is the mathematical and psychological reality that determines whether you're building wealth or just managing payments. The old middle class is gone. The new middle class is being born right now. The question is whether you'll be part of creating it or part of mourning what's been lost. The families who escape the middle class trap understand that freedom isn't about earning more. It's about owing less. It's not about having better credit. It's about needing less credit. They know that real security comes from having options, not from having obligations. They measure progress by decreasing monthly payments, not by increasing monthly income. This shift in measurement creates an entirely different life trajectory. Instead of chasing bigger paychecks to cover bigger payments, you focus on smaller expenses to create bigger freedom. Now you know what 90% of people don't. The middle class wasn't stolen by forces beyond our control. It was surrendered by collective behavioral shifts that we can choose to reverse. The opportunity in front of you right now is bigger than any opportunity available to the 1950s middle class. But it requires 2025 thinking applied to 1950s principles to access 2025 results. The path is clear, Luxonians. Eliminate debt. Reduce expenses. Increase savings. Build assets. Create options. Most importantly, remember that every dollar you don't owe to someone else is a dollar that works for your future instead of someone else's profit. The new middle class isn't about having more, it's about owing less. It's not about bigger houses, it's about smaller payments. It's not about impressing others, it's about freeing yourself. Welcome to Luxona, where millionaires are made.